The worm's path of destruction. Prestigious institutions like Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, NASA, and more exploit vulnerabilities in Unix systems using multiple attack vectors. A backdoor in email systems, a bug in the finger program designed to stay hidden but cause massive slowdowns. The fallout. No files were destroyed, but critical systems were crippled. Military and university functions slowed, emails delayed for days. Can you imagine not getting your mail for days? Institutions disconnected from the network for up to a week. The cost, damages estimated from 100,000 to millions. The hunt for the culprit. A young programmer confessed to friends in panic. Anonymous tips led the New York Times to identify him as Robert Tappan Morris. Morris was a Cornell graduate student with a knack for Unix and a history of pranks. The FBI investigation. FBI agents decrypted Morris's files and found incriminating evidence. Morris was charged under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. First person convicted under this law in 1990. His sentence, fine, probation, and community service. No jail time. The legacy of the Morris worm sparked awareness of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. It led to the creation of the first Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT, in Pittsburgh under DoD direction, and inspired both security and innovations in future cyber attacks. Lessons from the first cyber attack. The internet's power comes with risks. Vigilance is key. Cybersecurity is an evolving field born out of necessity, as we now know, over 20, 30 years later. Morris's worm showed how small mistakes can spiral into global chaos. The Morris worm wasn't just an attack, it was the dawn of cybersecurity. Last one. Last one. I wish you can't read, but I'm gonna go through this really quickly because I thought that this was really good information. So, the Morris worm exploited several vulnerabilities in the early internet, capitalizing on weakness in the Unix systems, as we heard, and the nascent state of cybersecurity. Here's how it worked. SendMail program exploit. The worm utilized a flaw in the debug mode of Unix SendMail program, which was originally designed for administrators to troubleshoot email issues. This allowed the worm to execute commands remotely on targeted systems, and if you can, on targeted systems 1 through 4. Now, if you can understand, this was 30 years ago, and they're talking about remotely, 30 years ago. Buffer overflow in the finger service, which I did a side note of what the finger service is. I'll get to that. It leveraged a buffer overflow vulnerability in the finger network service, which was used to identify users on the system. This allowed unauthorized code execution, enabling the worm to spread further. Weak password exploitation, which we've been talking about all week. The worm exploited weak or easily guessable passwords by taking advantage of transitive trust relationships between systems. It used remote execution protocols like RexEx and RSH, which often back proper password protection. Replication strategy. To ensure persistence, the worm was programmed to replicate itself, even if a system was already infected. And just a hint, if you guys having trouble with SciSet exam and they're talking about a worm, think about a worm when you cut it. It seems to grow back, right? That's how I thought of it. I was like, oh, okay, I can do the connection. Anyway, I digress. Replication strategy. To ensure persistence, the worm was programmed to replicate itself, even if a system was already infected. This redundancy caused multiple infections on single machines, slowing them down to a halt and mimiccing what we now recognize as a denial of service, DOS, attack. Stealth mechanisms. Morris designed the worm to spread covertly, intending it to propagate to propagate slowly and remain undetected. However, an error in its replication logic caused it to spread much faster than anticipated, amplifying its impact. All of these vulnerabilities allowed the Morris worm to infect approximately 6,000 computers within hours, disrupting major institutions, again, like NASA, Harvard, and Stanford. The attack exposed critical weaknesses in early internet infrastructure and underscored the urgent need for robust cybersecurity measures.